Hello, brilliant Riverview scientists and awesome Riverview families. This is Mr. Love coming from my living room with our pet dog Wiggy on April 14th. And just doing things a little differently this week. Instead of sending out an email with weekly assignments and goals, I thought I'd try it in a video this week. So I hope this works out all right. Um, so each week, I'm basically keeping your options the same for doing scientific investigations. There's a menu I've been sending out every week with some ideas for investigations, and then I'm also encouraging you to design your own investigation based on things that you're interested in. By doing that, I want you to own your own learning and choose or design an investigation that feels important to you, and also based on a topic that you really want to get smarter about. So the last few weeks I've been really impressed and inspired by the ideas that a lot of you are coming up with for these investigations based on interests you have and things that are in your house and events that are happening around you. There's been awesome investigations about that people have done about their pets, about toys that they have, even about cooking and chores that are happening in their house, sports and activities that they're interested in, observing wildlife around your home, collecting rocks, observing the weather. We've had students making crystals, studying their fingerprints. Somebody even did an experiment to see how different parts of their tongue taste different flavors differently, and studies about electricity, just all kinds. There's been so many awesome things. It's fun to see those. To see some of those examples, you can go to the virtual science fair. And by the way, this video at the bottom, there's a description, and in that description I'm going to include links to tools and resources that you might need, as well as the virtual science fair. If you'd like to share work that you're doing with other students, you can do that by following that link. So definitely check out those links to find the resources you need and some opportunities. Whatever topic you decide to investigate, this week I'm going to encourage you to follow the scientific process that guides all the investigations we do when we're at school. So this should be pretty familiar. And I'll have a link to that also in the video description. So I'll show you a couple investigations that we've done at our house and show you how we use the scientific process to do that. So both of these I was inspired by some other people who did investigations about their pets. And the other night we were having dinner and talking about how two people in our family like drinking cold water out of the refrigerator, and two of us like drinking warm water. And so we were just noticing that, and somebody said, I wonder what Wiggy the dog likes better, cold water or room temperature water. So that began our investigation, and we didn't agree on that. Some people thought, oh, he probably likes cold water because he has all that warm fur and he'd like to cool off. Other people thought he'd probably like the warmer water because it wouldn't give him brain freeze. So the only way to figure out was to do an experiment. So we each had our hypothesis, what we thought he would like better. We did the experiment. We decided what we would do is take him for a walk so he'd be really thirsty. So whenever we come back from a walk, he always likes to drink water. And then we'd put out two bowls that were the exact same bowl, same amount of water. One would have cold water, one would have warm water, and we'd encourage him to drink from both bowls and then see which one he went back to. And it turns out he did like the room temperature water better. That was the one he chose. So I'll be sharing the conclusions from our experiment, what we learned, by posting a report on the virtual science fair, so you can look for that. And the next steps, some of these applying our learning, we'll talk about next week. So I'm going to hold off on that. a lot of times when we answer a question and we learn from our experiment, that becomes the observation that leads us to another question. So at this point, maybe we're wondering, does our dog drink more water when he exercises more? How much water does he drink throughout the day? So those would be then questions that we could use to guide another experiment. Sometimes we have a question that doesn't lend itself to an experiment. There's not really a good way to set up an experiment to answer a question. And an example of that is this came up when a student sent me a report about an investigation they did about their dog, their pet dog, and some adaptations that their dog has that would help it survive in the wild. And we started talking about how dogs come from wolves. They descended from wolves, and how people bred wolves to do certain jobs. So that's how we end up with all these different breeds of dogs: small dogs, big dogs, dogs with all different kinds of characteristics and personalities or traits. And so that led me to a question of what type of job or work or characteristics was my dog Wiggy bred for? What kind of work did he originally was designed to do? And so I was thinking, Wiggy is always sniffing around looking for anything to eat. So I thought maybe Shih Tzus, which is the kind of dog he is, were bred to clean up. And there wasn't a really good way to do an experiment about that. I already know that that's how he is, but that breeding happened hundreds of years ago, and when the breed was first developed. So that's going to require some research. I'm going to need to do a little bit of research to find out why Shih Tzus were bred and what kinds of jobs they were originally scheduled to do. And what I found out through researching on some websites about different dog breeds is that they were bred by Chinese emperors to be in the palace and to bark whenever there were intruders, to warn that there was somebody around. And then they also became useful as companions for the emperors and the other royalty. They became like friends and companions for those royalty. So that also makes sense. He is a very friendly dog and likes to be around people a lot. And he does bark when he hears noises outside. So that made sense for what we've observed. Rather than writing an experimental lab report, for that I will do just a written report explaining what I learned through my research. And next steps, we'll talk next week about how we could apply that learning. But based on what I now know about Shih Tzu dogs, a question I had was what might be a good different breed to mix with the Shih Tzu to get like the perfect dog. And that would require some more research to learn about characteristics of other breeds. So just wanted to give you a couple examples of ways I've used the scientific process recently. Another one was I just was washing windows in our house, and I went through the same process to figure out what would be experimenting with the best products to use for cleaning windows. And I'll share those results with you later as well. So there are a lot of different ways of capturing what you're learning as you go. In the links at the bottom of the video, in the video description, there's a folder with learning tools in it, and there's a lot of different worksheets, a few different worksheets in there that you can use to guide and capture your learning. You could make a video where you just, like I'm doing now, where you talk about your experiment and what you learned from it, or your research. You could write out a report or a journal entry. And one of my favorite ways is labeled diagrams. So if you looking at a rock or taking apart a toy or studying an animal's habitat, I think labeled drawings are one of the best ways to show what you're observing and learning. Once you have that work, I would love to see it, and you can turn that work in either by emailing it to me. There will be a link to my email in the description for the video, or through Google Classroom, and there will also be a link of how to join Google Classroom if you haven't already done that. That's a good place to both see what the assignments are and to turn in work. You can send me photographs of your work. So if you have a report or a diagram, you can just take a picture of it and send that in. You can type it up in a Google Doc. You can make a Google slide. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, probably some that I haven't thought of. And a couple other things besides coming up with your own investigation or choosing one from that menu. I'm putting out weekly video challenges. So the last 2 weeks there was about incubating chicken eggs. And then this week I'm putting one out about seeds in our house and things you can do with experiments you can do with seeds. And then also Mystery Science is a website that has some great, there's my cat. Mystery Science is a website that has some really good investigations. As far as online resources, that's my favorite, and we use that in the classroom a lot, so most of you will be familiar. If you haven't sent in any work that you've done so far, I'd love to see what you've been up to. If you haven't gotten around to doing any scientific investigations yet, I hope you'll be able to fit that into your schedule soon. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with. And I really look forward to seeing all of you back in the science lab soon. Have a great week. See you later.